Welcome back, Red Spotters. I'm Alexis Soto, joined by Alexis Moreno, who hasn't been here in a week. So she has to explain herself as to why she wasn't here last time. And then we also have here David Francisco. We're back with Ahsoka. We're going to talk about Ahsoka again. Episode 6. Last week's episode. A lot of things happen and not really. So kind of par for the course. We gave a lot of really long thoughts about what happened here and there, and I'll just say this for me. I think there are some good things to say about what we saw last week, but I guess to me what matters more so is obviously characterization and obviously execution of themes and arcs, if that hasn't been made clear. And unlike a lot of people out there who are enjoying the show, and you know what, if you are, good for you. Again, full disclosure, we're going to crap on this. We'll continue to crap on this because we feel like this isn't very good. But if you like what you like, no one's going to fault you for that. So, but we also have our right to feel the way that we feel. And ultimately what happened last time was the best I can say, it was very confused in its execution, because it actually thought it left us in a place where something truly profound had happened, and I couldn't detect anything of the sort. And I think David and I were of that mind for the entire time. So, positive thing, I like Ahsoka's new costume, only because I didn't like the black, gray, the sleeveless stuff. Also was a little too, I don't know. I don't like any of it, and I guess, hey, it's something that I like. I'm not saying I like the direction or I liked what they did, but and she smiled, so I guess there were some points there. Anyway, Alexis, please, I've been waiting all week to hear what you have to say about what happened last week. I don't know if you saw what David and I talked about on the last recap show, but. And we can get into it if you'd like, but I'm really curious to see what you thought of what did they call it? Shadow Apprentice or Shadow Warrior? I don't even know what it was called.
Shadow Warrior.
Okay. I don't know what that means, but okay.
I didn't actually see your guys' video yet.
Oh, okay.
I will. But I guess I feel the same. I feel like I might have been a little bit more positive than you guys. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't seen it, so I would have to check that out first.
Real quick, we called it the best episode. Oh, I did.
Uh-huh.
Easily the best episode of the show. And I think for some pretty obvious reasons. I don't think we walked away with it like enraged or hating on it, because there was something there to actually engage with, you know? But I felt like as we kept talking through what was actually put to screen, we had more or less the expected issues that we would have. I think, and they're more in line with what we've been experiencing, which is just like confused execution, lapses in logic, gaps in the time of these characters, and then also just the regular nitpicks, because I feel like at the end of the day, this was a reunion of different sorts. David, and you correct me if I'm misrepresenting what we talked about, right? But we felt that as a reunion for Ahsoka and Anakin post Episode 6, this is not necessarily at all what we would have hoped to have gotten, especially with this. But we did have some positive things to say, which was, and I don't know if it's just because, and we can get into the whole whether, and you've seen this, I'm sure, online about this whole thing of whether or not Ahsoka had been intended to be stoic and dour this whole time by design or not. But for what it was, Ariana Greenblatt was like so good as Ahsoka almost off the bat. But then Rosario did improve with, I guess, the change in character. And you know, I thought what was a really big positive out of that episode was the idea of how post 15 years, how seamlessly Hayden came back into the role, maybe the best he's ever been. It honestly felt like he stepped off the set of Revenge of the Sith. Looked that way too. Looked amazing. You wouldn't even tell he aged 15 plus years. That was, and of course, he brought a sense of physicality to the lightsabers that remind you, he's an expert in that because, whoa, he was trained really, really well when he was making those movies. And it kind of puts everything else from a lightsaber choreography standpoint that we've seen on these Disney Plus shows to shame, because I'm not going to relent on this. The sequel trilogy had great lightsaber action, okay? If you don't believe that, I'm sorry. I think you need to get new glasses. So, and you know what? I think, and we didn't touch on this, David, but I feel like whatever concerns and fears we were thinking were going to happen with the utilization of the world between worlds, it didn't necessarily come to fruition the way that we thought it would be. So it was more just a backdrop than anything else to have that confrontation. So I wouldn't say it was like as the usual negative, like we were grasping for nice things to say. There were things in there to engage with, which was something, because the previous episodes there was nothing to engage with before. So, but no, I mean that's just catching you up basically on what we felt. But go ahead.
Yeah, I also think that the flashback scenes and in between scenes, they were okay. I had issues with a few things.
Did one of those issues include the visuals?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I called it when they were when I said it was they borrowed James Wan's fog machine, because man, there was just nothing but fog, and it was hilarious how I saw a tweet that those three battles. Well, first of all, you couldn't even tell they were three different battles because
and they were big ones too, like
yeah,
important ones, which is wild to me.
But they looked exactly the same.
But yeah, Christian Haydenson was, I think he was amazing.
Hayden Christensen. You said Christian Haydenson. Hayden Christensen.
Oh.
Yeah. It happens.
He was amazing. And young Ahsoka, I don't know the name of the actress, I'm sorry.
So she's Ariana Greenblatt, and she played young Gamora in Infinity War, and she was also the daughter of America Ferrera in Barbie this year. So
she was great.
Mm-hmm.
Her costume was amazing, and so was his.
Both the costumes. I even thought because like the first time we see him in the flashbacks was like year one of the Clone Wars, and you know what? It's kind of a hit or miss how they translate the animated, versions of those characters as far as a costume standpoint in the live action. That one was more hit, especially the haircut too.
Yeah. And then I don't know if you saw that when he was doing like the press stuff for Obi-Wan, he had that haircut, and he kept getting asked if he was going to be in Ahsoka, and he had to be like, well, I don't know. And then everybody was like, he had the haircut. He knew.
I mean, no one's surprised he's in this show. Mm-hmm. No one's surprised.
But yeah, but I feel like as far as like how the story went or how the episode went, what they were trying to say, I forgot what I think I might have listened to a little bit of what you guys had to say, but then I stopped because I hadn't finished the episode.
It was an hour and a half.
David, and that was when we tried calling you on Friday, because I was like, I have so many thoughts.
So that's why I'm waiting to hear what those thoughts were.
Yes. I literally was screaming at the top of my lungs of like, why is this her trauma? Like, I don't understand why leaving Anakin is what is causing all this trouble for her. Like, I understand she may feel guilty, but I don't get why it's such like a big thing, because like everything that happened after that, I don't know, it's just crazy that like that is, I don't know, hold on, I need to like get my thoughts together because it's too much. The whole like let go or like keep fighting or whatever the fuck that they
basically said. to live or to die.
Yeah.
Do you choose to live or to die? We couldn't tell. We spent a whole like almost an hour, I think, after the episode on the recording on that recap on YouTube right now last week. David and I could not figure out what the hell that meant.
Yeah. It just, and then some of the dialogue that they had him say, I thought was a bit cringe. I didn't like some of the lines. Um, it's just, I don't know. I just feel like they could have done so much more, and they could have gone even deeper into what is actually like her trauma, her actual trauma. You know, I don't know.
Well, Alexis, the problem here is, and you tell me this. I mean, I feel like even giving it no, not courtesy, but giving it like the credit that somehow that was what the trauma was the whole time. Maybe even I think that would be giving it too much credit because I feel like if you read a lot of the online conversations, it seems that's what people have walked away with the idea because, and there had to be a conversation because God help you, if you're just watching this episode, they don't ever say it. You know, again, part of the problem that has happened with a lot of, well, this show particularly, but a lot of the Star Wars shows is these characters speak in riddles. They can't just, and look, I'm not saying to have dialogue that is like so like dumbed down that it spells it out, but I'm only suggesting at this point maybe you should because you seem to think, and when I mean you, I mean the people behind these shows and writing them particularly. They seem to be under the impression that that this output is clear enough to understand.
Yeah.
And I am telling you, that was one of the most confused executions of something I've ever seen in my life because okay, let's go under this assumption that this was trying to say that that Ahsoka had been carrying this trauma. She'd been carrying this guilt, the fact that, you know, her master became Sith Lord, you know, the terror of the universe, and maybe he wouldn't have been that if she had chose to stay at his side, and maybe she could have prevented all of this destruction. Okay, let's be fair and let's say that's what it was trying to do. Part of the issue with that is that if this is what this character was going through this entire time, why do you wait until now to spring it on us? You know? Like, how are we supposed to have like understood this whole time that she was going through really anything, considering the way that you presented her? Like, you presented her as this robotic, emotionless, distant, cold person who sometimes comes off as an asshole. She obviously was not very likable on the show or on The Mandalorian or Boba Fett, whatever it was. So like, I don't know how you expected us to understand that there was like this whole thing that she was going through. I mean, we could have guessed because we know that the history of this character, and our problem this whole time was you kept showing her and you kept presenting her in this light, but you made no suggestion at all or no allusion at all to the very real traumatic issues or psychological issues that she was experiencing. But you wait until now in the middle of the show to do it, and you do it in the most like what's the right word here, in the most vague way possible. Like, basically what happens in this episode is we are, in the span of this episode, we're introduced to the idea that she had been carrying guilt this whole time. If you'd watched just the last episode of the show, you wouldn't have guessed that. You wouldn't have known.
And so you know, a lot of people complain about Obi-Wan.
I wish we had Obi-Wan quality right now.
You knew that man was troubled the minute he stepped onto the screen. And in a show called Ahsoka, and you're not showing all of this throughout the entire show. There was a thing that David said, which I agree should have happened. Ahsoka should have gone through like a AA type of situation of going through the steps of grief.
We should have seen that. That's the problem again. How many times do we have to rub up against this problem on this show where there are gaps? We should have seen that. That's what we should be seeing, not this. Because if we had seen that, perhaps that would help us with whatever that was last week. We would have had more to, like, have in our minds and be thoughtful of. But I was saying, not only in that one episode did it introduce the idea that she had trauma, but by the end of it, it's or not even the end, but at the halfway point,
fixed.
it's resolved.
I'm sorry, but this was the episode. Okay, like, yes, Anakin should have come out at one point in the show because we know that that's part of her trauma. We understand that. We've seen it. We've seen it happen. We understand what's going on. But if you really wanted to, like, please the fanboys, this should have been the episode where Obi-Wan should have come out. This should have been the episode where, or at least the first episodes, like, where Luke came out. She should have talked to Luke, not in what happened in whatever show it was that they talked.
Maybe if they made her, yes, but maybe if they made a real Ahsoka show. This is not an Ahsoka show. It just has the name Ahsoka. This is busy being something else. Like, it's busy being a sequel to Rebels or the original trilogy.
Frustrating.
Because this should be all about her, and we should be seeing these things. But instead, we get this version of it, which is, I can't believe people watch that episode. Not just the people. I mean, I can believe the Star Wars fans because at this point, they're some of the most brain dead people out there. Where the quality to them doesn't necessarily mean anything. But I can't believe the people who made that looked at that and thought that was anywhere near coherent.
No.
That any of that made sense. Like the whole to live or to die thing was so confused because I don't even know what Anakin meant by that. I don't know why he had to talk like that in riddles.
Yeah.
I don't understand why, of all the things to do.
And imagine, oh my God, imagine like getting the scene that we got in Obi-Wan where Anakin is, I think I mentioned it last time I was here, of him telling Obi-Wan, like, this wasn't your fault, this was me. In Anakin, like, coming from Anakin, not coming from Darth Vader to Ahsoka.
Right.
Wild. Already, like, 1,000 times better. And already more, like, I understand what's going on.
Like, a lot of this should have just been a real conversation. Like, I mean,
it should have been.
They even just, like, I don't understand why they dance around just saying Darth Vader or saying the dark side.
They're trying to do, like, the whole Yoda thing, whatever, where he comes and he talks in riddles, but Anakin is not Yoda, and
aren't those characters.
Anakin is here to apologize for everything that happened, make sure that Ahsoka
but he
knows.
Didn't.
No, he didn't. And, like, none of that happened, and it's like, I don't understand how she's okay. Like, okay,
and then
yes,
he had the nerve of the
things that happened in the past, but, like, that, I feel like that doesn't resolve anything. I feel like that's so like, that's the easy way out. Like,
it's so completely easy.
Characters, it's literally sister and brother. Like, it's just wild to me. It's so crazy to me that this is what we got. And again, I liked seeing them. I like seeing them together. Yes, but ultimately, like, their relationship and what they meant to each other is more important than what they look.
Yeah.
And this is just not, I don't know. And it could be, that we're just haters, but I just think that, like, I don't know, we've gotten so much more in the past from the other shows with both of them, that, again, in a show called Ahsoka, where you're trying to show, her after everything that has happened in her life, wild.
And I mean, we keep saying every week, like, yeah, we understand why people might see us as, like, haters about this, but, or, about the show and these characters. But I mean, Alexis, just real briefly, you did get a chance to see those videos I sent. I believe the creator's name is Artur.
Which he loves the show, by the way.
I'm sure he does, but that doesn't mean that what he had to say about the Clone Wars is any less true. I haven't even seen what he said about Ahsoka, mainly because I don't really need to or care to. Um, but you seem to enjoy his videos on the Clone Wars, which I mean, to me, my experience watching his videos was just a reminder about why I loved the show, and why I loved those characters, and like how he put it himself. Like again, and I think without even meaning to, he pretty much just said it out loud. The idea that a lot of Star Wars fans don't really think about story or themes or characters, and that's why he made those videos, because nobody that was praising Clone Wars was talking about any of those things. They were talking about connections, as if
Mhm.
that's what like made the show special and great. And
And
yeah,
not connections as in relationships, connections as like, oh, this character's here and look, this character's not here. No,
like
that's not.
this past week has been like horrific. Like so many things that I've shared with you guys of like things that I don't that were like they were not parody. They were like 100% genuine. This one person literally clipped together all of the references to Darth Vader in the sequel trilogy films as if he was grading them by that as to how many times Darth Vader was mentioned in the sequel trilogy. And you'd think by listening to that, that's a joke. No serious person would actually think or use that as a measurement for how good or not, or what value or not those films have. These are the kind of people we're dealing with. Anyway, and then there was this whole over the top baptism that took place. And again, if what are we supposed to get out of that? Like, what did it think it was communicating there? Okay, what sins were washed away? How is she any different now? And again, this is not even getting into the whole inconsistency of at one point she was, I'm no Jedi, but then she was a Jedi again. And that whole thing was skipped. So, and that also doesn't help this whole situation. But
Yeah.
now she's Ahsoka the White. And I don't know what that means. And I suspect they're not going to release information about that.
No.
It just is what it is. I don't know how people can enjoy that. Like it's so incoherent. I don't understand. I'm like, again, every episode ends and I'm like, especially last week where yeah, there were some nice things to say, but still it was like the going back to square one, which was wow, they had something there, didn't they?
Yeah, that's what's so frustrating
They
too. That
played
I
this in
feel like
theaters.
every episode they're trying so hard to communicate something, but I just cannot for the life of me figure out what it is.
And by the way, if anyone else who may be listening would dare to suggest, well, maybe you guys just don't know how to detect what's so obviously put there. Putting aside the whole idea of half of all Star Wars fans consistently to this day fail at every turn to detect the presence of a character arc for Poe and Finn in The Last Jedi. They still complain about Finn having nothing to do, a waste of time Canto Bight was, and Poe just being there. If you walk away out of that movie thinking that, you have outed yourself as somebody who has no ability to detect what a character arc is or what themes are. Just putting that there. The next thing is, notice how all of a sudden, after this episode, not before, but after this episode, a whole bunch of Star Wars fans are now all of a sudden turning around. Well, it turns out the reason Ahsoka was acting or was feeling a little bit inconsistent and was feeling a little bit not herself was because she was depressed. Only we didn't know it. Or even worse yet, some would say, well, I knew it, but clearly you didn't know, and you couldn't pick up on that.
Obviously, we knew something was up because we talked about it all the time. It's just it wasn't. Why are we guessing? Like, why are we like that? That's not able to communicate something clearly.
It was not in the text, and it wasn't anywhere in the subtext. It was not at all something that was a thing.
It's just crazy.
Yeah. It's
so frustrating.
It is. And then the last we saw them, they went into a whale and they jumped into space, and I guess we'll see what this episode is. I did read something, by the way, and I wanted to share with you guys before we start this reaction, just to keep this in mind, because it made me somewhat curious about what we're going to see here. DJ Woldridge had this to say about the episode we're about to watch. This week's Ahsoka is a great example of how masturbatory Star Wars has become. So basically, the Star Wars universe has legends that are its own version of Star Wars. And the characters from our Star Wars travel to that Star Wars. And it's pretty much just the same Star Wars. I don't know what that means. I'm not even going to pretend I know what that meant. But I'm curious to see what we see to have provoked this kind of response. To be fair, he does give clear examples, but I haven't read those because they're spoilers. So we'll see when we come back from the reaction. So anything else to say before we start this?
But I believe their activity speaks to a larger operation involving Thrawn.
Oh my gosh, in the last episode when Hera was talking with Mom Mothma, and she was like, do you have any evidence of like this whole thing happening? David Tennant's character, Huey Yang, he literally had schematics of the ship that the villains left with. And so he could have been like, here's the evidence. There's a ship. Like, go and chase it. I don't know why. Did they even bring that up? Or I don't remember.
Pretty sure
I suppose that evidence is currently in the innards of a whale.
Oh, that's true. But either way, though, she could have been like, hey, I got a copy of Huey Yang's schematics of the ship.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that's there. I would just be more... I'm still just pissed off. Like, really? This is the best Mon Mothma can do? What good are you? If this is the best you can... This is fucking Hera we're talking about!
Oh, that looks cool.
Perhaps you have a story for me.
Can we talk about what happened? Please?
Finally?
Please?
She went with the enemy willingly.
No, not that! I thought you were going to talk about like what you went through, your personal journey. Can we touch on that? Can we get that out of you so we can figure out what happened? We know what happened with Sabine. We saw that. We don't know what happened with you.
Are you serious?
Right? This is what we're...
She could have vented. I don't fucking know.
This is also the fastest conversation that they've had in this entire show.
Yeah.
Like, they're actually like moving like in a normal pace and all that. Whereas it's just like 5-minute pauses or something.
Huang knows the ways of the Jedi. Who else would she have to talk to about what she just experienced? Why wouldn't she want to talk about that? Especially with, we just left off with that, what was supposed to be this amazing journey in her life. And now here she is, again, acting as if nothing even happened.
In a galaxy far, far away.
Oh, so now that is canonized. Oh my fucking god. So now a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, now there's a canon reason for why that pops up on the screen. Great. And if that wasn't enough, there is the title, Far, Far Away. Which makes me think of Shrek.
That is Peridia, the ancient homeworld of my ancestors, the Dathomiri.
The Jedi Archive spoke of this place.
My people were among the first to harness and ride the creatures in the days before time was counted.
I wouldn't want to be there.
They are witches. Ew, those are bones.
Yeah, that's why.
That's kind of cool.
should have mentioned it, but they gave context about the planet, which it's cool info, but it was weirdly like placed. I don't know. Like, why wasn't that girl asking the questions? Like, what is this planet? Like, what can you tell me about the history of it? Something like that. Obviously, she wouldn't actually say that, but what? I don't know. It's just
Right.
you just told us that information just because it's somehow important. Why couldn't it have been here? Like, Sabine's like, where are we at? And she's like, and then that's when the one lady tells her the whole history, just because.
Because we have to go fly with whales. That's pretty cool.
The music's kind of neat.
I love the gold.
It is a really interesting look, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's not like anything we've seen before as far as the
Which
design.
is weird because it's literally just gold. Ooh.
Are you seeing that?
What thing? I was drinking water. Oh.
Yeesh, they look so creepy. They look so cool.
Welcome, child.
They
of
do,
Daphne.
actually.
So, I thought they were dead. I mean,
These weren't.
I know they're witches and all that.
So it turns out these witches were there the whole time, though.
Yeah.
They never left.
The witches from the
Okay.
Clone Wars show
Okay.
were basically from
left.
this planet,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
and they migrated
Okay.
to in Clone Wars. I think that's what DJ Wooldridge means when, like, there's, what was it, history in this galaxy that's basically like the same in ours or something. I don't know. And maybe that's how
Maybe.
they're just gonna get stuff that was gone before. Maybe.
It could be that, but keep in mind, we're only at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
That was a pretty cool scene.
I like
that
that
may
scene.
be my favorite scene ever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is.
easily.
And you see how this one required like less shots of like panning shots of the world and all that.
faster
And
pace
I'm noticing that too.
The direction
because
is
they're nearing
different.
the end, so
Yeah.
they gotta hurry up.
Who directed this episode? Because so far they're
I don't
doing
know.
great job.
It doesn't feel like Filoni.
Yeah.
Bishop Master.
Are they actually gonna talk for once?
Children's stories come to life.
Yeesh.
I watched everything I knew burn. Couldn't make sense of it at the time. You realize it's all inevitable. It repeats again and again. Finally bring this cycle to an end.
Why couldn't we have gotten this in the first episode
I
of the
kn-
show?
I know. Okay.
The first episode. What was this?
For
Where did this
sure.
come from?
Yeah, like we got a bit more context with his character. Like, okay, there's something there. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it right now. I'm trying to focus. But now though, like my big question is like, what is their relationship? Obviously, like, you know, master and apprentice. But it's like, is this, you know, like Sith master and apprentice, where she's always in fear of the master, and he's always like, and like she's always on this thin line with him.
It's like interesting because I don't feel like it's either or.
Yeah,
No,
I feel
that's
like
the
it's
thing.
like right in the middle of like not good but not bad.
Mm-hmm.
Their relationship is giving off some vibes of like Anakin and Ahsoka, as far as like how they saw each other and how
Uh-huh.
their relationship was. This is very unlike any kind of like dark side Sith duo master
Yeah.
apprentice we've seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Like him not killing her, Sabine, is like a big deal. Or at
Right.
least attempting to kill her.
What's happening?
The whales.
Oh, shit.
Never mind. I thought it was the whales.
It's Thrawn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang, is that beat up?
Is that the one that
I
like?
mean, it's the same one.
Yeah.
Hilarious how it survived, right? But
Mhm.
it's
But then that just brings the question: like, what happened to Ezra? Like,
right.
you think that the ship would have gotten destroyed or something, but it's like, no, it's intact. he might have survived
And
it.
remember, it wasn't just a ship they took away; it was his whole fleet.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So there's people in there too. Oh shit.
What the hell?
Drum.
Hey. Okay. At least we got to see him. I said that last episode. Like, I think we gotta start seeing him now. Can't do it in the last two.
This is kind of creepy.
Mm-hmm.
His little smile. Eesh.
He does look creepy,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he does.
like very creepy.
Like off-putting.
Yeah, unsettling. Unsettling is the better word.
I am very interested as to why that reaction from her.
Yeah, especially since she was like ready to kill her like
Yeah.
many times before.
Our primary objective is to escape this galaxy. It matters not whether Ren and Bridge are killed or stranded here. The same can be said for your two mercenaries.
If it's that important, what are you taking out of that place that is so important? Just get the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, get me the fuck out of this place.
You abandoned me! Should have known you were a coward.
Okay, that was
a bit
mean. That's so uncalled for. What the hell?
Oh.
It's like a horse, hyena, platypus looking thing. The ears of a bat. I mean, I'm just wondering, like, wait a minute. All these whales just took you across the galaxy and then just like ditched you, and you guys all were fine, and you've just been here the whole time doing nothing for what, 10, 12 years? How did Ezra get off alive? Unless he was riding the whales.
Yeah, that's just the biggest thing. Like,
I mean, it's Star Wars. Like, logistical questions, logistical answers are not necessarily required, but when...
Hey!
That was random. What?
so I'm seeing this episode through my phone. So I don't know if, like, maybe it's different for you guys, but the CGI is not that great, isn't it?
No.
Okay.
I'm more preoccupied with how ugly this place looks. And I get that it's supposed to be a barren wasteland, but this looks like where did they go to? They went to Scotland?
No.
I don't know where this would be.
He was trained as a Jedi. I trained to be something more.
And that would be what? I love how this show just refuses to answer anything.
I know.
Anything.
Perhaps they flee a power greater than their own.
Oh, are they gonna do that?
Something calls to me. Can't you hear it?
So that's why you came here, not because of Thrawn. Then you wanted something here.
Mm-hmm.
So when he says beginning, does he want to stay here?
Does he want to make like a new...
There it is. The enemy of our enemy is our friend. So who... So in the original animated version of this show, there was supposed to be this other group of people who were supposed to be at war with Thrawn. That's based off the rumors and reports that we had heard of back in 2020. We did like a whole 4-hour podcast on that. I remember it very vividly. We were talking about it very clearly. Okay, so again, I'm just piecing together what I know. If I didn't have that, how would you know what's going on here? And maybe in one way he did spell it out, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But again, like, what are we working with here?
Yeah, why? Like, what are you trying to do?
So he's not worried about being left behind. He clearly came. That's the reason he is here for.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't really care about Thrawn.
Yeah.
I think he wants to start a new
order, a new
Possibly.
society.
Because maybe he just thinks power, like Jedis are just superior, and he kind of just saw Thrawn as a stepping stone to get what he really wants, which is like more power of Jedi.
Well, what he just said, I like the idea of it.
Uh-huh.
not what it actually was.
Uh-huh.
Jedi Order was very corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're being honest,
He's not
kind
wrong.
of evil at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they covered up the fact that they realized that their clones were created by the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
All because of public perception. Because support in the war would collapse. But that's the point. If you had revealed that, then that would have saved your asses. But because they didn't want to lose support for the war, some of them were a bit warmongering.
Yeah.
Let's be real about that.
I knew I could count on you.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does he gonna have blue hair?
He's just there.
That's because I didn't know where I was going.
Typical. Always a plan. Never a good one.
Hey.
I hate just. They shouldn't be talking right now. I'm sorry. Like, she should have been like, oh my god, it's you, and they should have been hugging. Like, this is the time.
This should have been. The music is great.
The music is so good. Yes, like.
That was very underwhelming.
And it continues to be.
I have so many questions.
So do we.
Let's not talk about that.
What?
No. She's got to tell him right away, like, Thrawn has a way to go back to the galaxy.
And, like, he's right behind us.
Well, I mean, she doesn't know that, but, like, still.
Well, she knows that Thrawn is up there in the sky somewhere.
Yeah.
She could at least tell him, like, oh yeah, I met Thrawn. He let me go to come find you.
Can't wait to go home.
She's gonna be like, well, you see, the thing is, he still kind of looks like a what was his name? Elon Musk.
Yeah, I know.
To know her background, history, home world, her master, everything.
Yes, Grand Admiral.
So is that what's gonna happen? He's gonna like tap into her past
That's how
and
he
then
always.
torture her with it.
That's what he always does.
Well,
with his
I'm a
enemies.
little okay. I guess to me, there's a lot to touch there, and a lot to be curious about. Of course, how can you not be when the show comically
Dang,
refuses
these
to answer?
the end credits are 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's long.
God damn.
Doesn't really want to engage with the answers, but well, to be fair, it's giving us more, I guess. To Thrawn, his interaction with the concept of the Force and all its properties, as he called it himself in Rebels, has been an enigma to him. And there really wasn't much of a connection or a relationship there before. So what I'm curious about here is when this relationship he has with the Night Sisters was even established, considering also that Morgan herself was not just a surviving Night Sister, but also an Imperial. But I don't know how those go hand in hand together when she should know that, of course, the destruction of her entire race was ordered by, we could say Dooku, but we know behind Dooku was the Emperor Palpatine. So I'm really curious how those two linked up together, the Grand Admiral of the Empire, and then of course the Night Sisters. And you see here, of course, Thrawn is treating them with all seriousness and faith in their powers and abilities, which is not something we've seen him.
I mean, he's always been kind of different, like
yes,
in all sense of the word.
Yeah.
You know, he obviously he wasn't a good person, but he had, I don't know, I felt like he always had some type of end goal, some type of side thing going on. So I don't know.
He did to the. I mean, I don't know all the details, but I know there was in the extended canon stuff. Timothy Zahn, I believe, came back and did a whole new Thrawn trilogy. And there was one called Thrawn Betrayals, and there was a point where the Emperor himself was questioning Thrawn's loyalty. Because again, Thrawn's entire race is somewhere in the unknown regions. Curiously, how that wasn't brought up here, and I'm curious. Yeah. It doesn't seem to be that this galaxy is the one where his people are at. But I am also wondering then, how in the world was he able to have contact with the Shadow Council? So for those that watched Mandalorian Season 3, there was this one sequence where Moff Gideon was literally in a room full of people, remaining warlords. One of them happened to include General Hux's father, and the other one included Captain Pelion. And Captain Pelion was one of those characters that was off screen, but he was mentioned of in the finale of Rebels. He was Thrawn's main captain. And you hear his voice cut off when the whales literally come in and you know, jettison their entire fleet over to where I guess we see now. But I'm not understanding, unless Pelion already, I don't know, but it doesn't make any sense. How did like his captain already travel his way back and yet Thrawn is still there? It doesn't make any sense. My question is, how are they having any kind of contact at all to begin with? Like, okay, so what? Thrawn has to completely rely on Morgan Elsberry to conjure a way to get him back, but the remaining warlords are just sitting there? So again, these are just questions that come to mind. Not really, they're not that important in comparison to all the other things that this show is like juggling and then in some instances fumbling. But it's just where my mind goes, because I'm still that person where I'm curious about the lore and how these things link up.
Yeah.
You know?
But also, just how is he exiled? Like, what is it that he couldn't make it back to the other galaxy?
My assumption is there was no map, and if he had just blasted off into hyperspace in any direction, well, if you do that, you risk your entire like life, because people don't just like, even though it seems that way, from our distance as viewers, it seems like you can just pick any random spot and then like just jump into hyperspace. No, I think in Rebels they established that there are dedicated hyperspace lanes that you jump into, because as Hera had said before, well, not even before, that the Purrgil, the space whales, intrude on some of those lanes and have even killed some of her friends in the past, which is why she didn't like those whales. So yeah, I assume the reason he was stranded was because there was no realistic way to come back.
Yeah.
That begs the question, of course, how the hell do they still have gas for all of their devices and ship that's been literally there for a little over 10 years now? And it also begs further questions about like why the whales just left them there, especially since, if we recall, one of them not only had, you know, their tentacles wrapped around the ship, but also around him. And for the whales to just like, okay, our job is done.
Yeah.
Then they just take off, and Ezra and Thrawn are just stranded there. Okay. Again, talk about the least interesting way to go about this. Because when we were reading the rumors about what would be in the animated version of this, there would already be an ongoing story developing with Thrawn beyond just, I'm just waiting here to get picked up. I'm just waiting for my ride. There was so much more intrigue in the idea that he had reconnected with his people, and that his people had been in a war with a different race of aliens. Unless that's going to be Heir to the Empire, but that doesn't also make any sense, because Heir to the Empire would be a title to a project that would mean he would come back. Again, like, as with everything else in the show, just taking the least interesting approach. Oh, so it turns out this whole time they were just there. They were literally up to nothing. Okay.
And why wouldn't he go look for Ezra? Why it don't make no sense.
Yeah.
And also his entrance is pretty cool. Ezra's was not.
Mhm. Yeah, I really thought Ezra was going to have like a little rebel army to like go up against Thrawn still, or the witches or something. But
I honestly would have at this point liked for him to have been the stormtrooper person in the mask.
Yeah, that would have been something, right? Because that's where you and I think a lot of us were feeling that, like, wait,
is it?
Yeah.
Enoch, and it's like, huh? They were cutting away to him too many times. He was still in the
Yeah.
scene. It's like,
Yeah, there's something going on there.
maybe there is, well, maybe there still is, but at first I was like, is that Ezra under that mask? That would have been something.
Yeah.
But again,
It would. I enjoyed this episode more than the rest.
True. I feel the same way.
Yeah, I
But-
think this is one of the most better directed episodes in the entire show so far. Like we mentioned in the beginning, the dialogue was moving a lot faster than before. Like it feels like we're moving along at a good pace here. But there is,
But again, we're 6th episode in. We have 2 more episodes.
and we still know very, very, very little about everything that's going on. Like,
and so very little has happened,
Mhm.
and again, so little continues to happen. I would say on the whole,
Next episode for sure is just gonna be a Thrawn episode,
You think? Are we sure?
like Thrawn and Ezra,
no,
and then the finale.
I think.
Do you think we actually get flashbacks to what happened? I mean, that'd be nice.
No,
but
I don't know. Like whatever they're trying to do right now. So that's what I'm saying. Like we have 2 episodes left. Nothing else is gonna happen.
Here's the thing, plot wise, that needs to happen is that when Ahsoka comes in, she needs to do something that slows down Thrawn, because it just doesn't make sense for me that like Ahsoka shows up, she somehow finds Ezra and Sabine, and then within that they make a plan to stop Thrawn, and it's like, well, no, something needs to happen that like Thrawn needs to stay in here and prioritize stopping Ahsoka. So what is that? And we don't know what he's bringing into this, from this galaxy into ours, and he needs to bring something, because it makes no sense for me that he just shows up and then he's just gonna be like, all right, all of you follow my orders now, of like the remainder of the bad guys.
Yeah.
So it just makes no sense. And then also, oh my gosh, well, actually, we'll get into that a bit later, but yeah, I just don't know what's gonna happen next in the next episode. Especially, chances are it's not gonna be a lot of Thrawn. It's just gonna be Ahsoka and the bad guy. What's his name? Yeah, the other not Jedi guy. Balon. Yeah, it's just gonna be about them, and I think Thrawn's just gonna be left aside.
Yeah. This whole episode, honestly, I feel like for me kind of cements the fact that this should have been the show that dug deep into the Force and all that stuff, because you have a character that is so deeply connected to the Force, and you could have had like the whole Ezra thing, maybe not have it be the main point, but it could have led to like maybe what this show is now. Ezra clearly has a lot of time in his hands. Why wouldn't he tap more into the Force? Like he could have somehow connected with Ahsoka.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm just reading some reactions that made me laugh really right now. I just shared them with you guys in the chat so you can see them. I'll read them off. This is from J-Bro Movies. Thoughts on Ahsoka. Blue Elon Musk, which is funny. He does look like
him.
that.
And then in our other group chat, there's a picture of Elon Musk, and it's literally him.
Blue Elon Musk looks stupid and talks in Reddit. It's time to. This one got me. This next one. It's time to drone strike all pieces of the volume and stagecraft to hell. Star Wars has never
literally.
The
But title
title
pisses me off.
That's a personal thing. What's the title?
Far,
What
far
is it?
away.
Oh yeah, that's right. I commented on that. I just wish one person.
Emotion.
It makes me very sad. I waited 6 years for so much in this episode, and I don't feel any of these characters I ever met before. Reunions don't work like that. Oh, and Ahsoka has to be reminded to not be an asshole again, so that's cool. We're at the very top. What happened to all that change? What happened to all the smiles? And instead of using the top of the episode, maybe talk to Hewing and talk to somebody about what the fuck you just went through and what that means for you. Instead, you choose to crap on Sabine. Which, you've already had several scenes of you crapping on Sabine to her face and behind her back. Like, most of the scenes that she was involved with, Ahsoka, was more or less 95% of just crapping on Sabine. To a relationship we will never see, apparently. Much less have any context for. But this was funny. Just reading this is really funny. So I'm just like going through these reactions, which are amazing. The other thing I wanted to show you guys, and I kind of I knew of a reunion that was going to happen. I didn't know how it's going to happen, but again, it was the same person. And it's a clip from The Force Awakens. And again, like the very thing that David was like catching on immediately when this supposed reunion happened between Sabine and Ezra, which, by the way, shout out to Kevin Kiner. He is doing the heavy lifting on this whole show. The music is continuing to be great.
For sure.
And it was especially great in that moment. But the clip that Joe Bro Movies clipped out about, like, in comparison to from The Force Awakens, was why does the scene of Rey and Finn reuniting after a few hours have more emotion than Ezra and Sabine finding each other after 10 years? And it's this one here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's when they're on Starkiller base and then they embrace warmly things.
Oh yeah, I remember. Okay,
this is what this should have been. Like, especially like when Han tells Rey, or Chewbacca tells her that it was like Finn's idea. This is how it works. This is how you do it. Not like, and the way that he was just standing the whole nonchalantly. I knew you'd come.
Yeah.
What was that execution?
And also with Rey and Finn, that line that he says, it's like, we came back for you. Like, that's an important line because that's what she's been waiting for her whole life, was just someone to come back for her and all that. And then actually, when you brought up Rey and Finn, I thought you meant the scene in the Last Jedi when she saves them from the caves and all that, and they hug each other and all that. I thought that was that was very sweet. There was no dialogue. It was just a hug, and you could see like there was warmth in her from that hug. And then this one, like, they're going on the banter. It's like, no, you haven't seen each other in years. They're saying like, they feel like siblings and all that, but like, I don't know. I also feel like they were trying to go for a relationship at the same time or something. And there's something there. You shouldn't go on a banter. It should have been an immediate hug, or like
way too casual to begin with. On top of it, just feeling so incredibly forced.
Yeah, and especially for Sabine too, like, literally you just endangered the entire universe in the hopes that your friend is still alive. You should have been so happy, because at least, even though she just endangered the galaxy, at least she has him, And like, and she should have told him right away, because some part of her was to be like, okay, it's me, it's him, like we can take on anything. Like she can feel like that with him, and she should have told him right away, like, by the way, Thrawn has a way to go back to our galaxy. We gotta go now.
Let me read. So I teased at the very beginning, Wooldridge's tweet, and what he was talking about. Yes, David, you want to?
Can you read the first tweet again? Because it was like
Yes,
so weirdly.
I was about to
Okay.
do that because it says Star Wars so many times and it makes my head explode.
Yeah.
He says, this week's Ahsoka is a great example of how masturbatory Star Wars has become. So basically, the Star Wars universe has legends that are its own version of Star Wars. Probably in reference to the title a long time ago, Far, Far Away, which is also what Huang says. And then he continues, and the characters from our Star Wars travel to that Star Wars, I think that he means the unknown regions, and it pretty much is just the same Star Wars. Not much different because there's Night Sisters and then he continues on saying, this is what I didn't read before. This is a quote. The Jedi used to tell legends of long ago in a galaxy far, far away. That was the quote from Huang. And then I think he's literally just, I think, riffing on this. This is not an exact quote. That sounds amazing. It must be so different than our galaxy. Not really. Pretty much just like ours. Raiders, critters, the usual. Oh, okay. Yeah, always kind of wondered why they told those stories. Then he continues, that said, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Ahsoka so far, I don't hate watch things. I've clearly been compelled to keep watching, and I think one of the reasons is interest in Thrawn and Thrawn's big entrance. And Thrawn's big entrance did not disappoint. Also, a fan of the Spartan Trooper Enoch, and I just found that the Spartan Trooper is played by Wes Cham, who plays the best character in The Expanse. Okay, so that just goes off somewhere else. Not what we were talking about here. I mean, it's not the worst Star Wars has done. Maybe I'm just been so used to it. Like, oh, okay. Oh, I mean, what else are we gonna do? It's Star Wars, right? It is what it is. It's not something that I was thinking about too often, really, here. In comparison to other things that were happening. Which, and here's another good tweet from Joe Bro saying, Balin and Shin deserve a much better show. Come on.
For sure.
I mean, look, I feel like they were kind of the highlight of the episode in a way because there was so much intrigue there. You know what? Ray Stevenson, rest in peace. Wow. I would really have loved to have seen more of that character in a version of the show that actually cared more to give him things, and I'm actually quite curious the perspective that he has and seemingly what he has found there to ally himself with. That is something definitely worth exploring, and I cannot believe that not only did we wait 6 episodes to just say it, 6 of 8 episodes. I mean, we're not going to do anything with that if we're at 6 of 8 episodes. What are we doing here? What is this even for?
Yeah.
Wait until the last possible minute to even. It would have been better off to just do nothing, because actually what you have here is interesting.
That's what I keep saying. I feel like they have so many interesting things to say in the show, but it's just not coming out the way that they think that it is. I don't know.
Yeah, like we get, like I mentioned before, we got more context of what his motivations are, but now I just want to know the motivation of taking on an apprentice. Like, there is a whole story there that just we're not getting anything from it,
Yeah.
Especially because, like, again, like, is this like Sith master and apprentice relationship where the master's just like always pissed off at the apprentice wants to always like make the master happy and all that, but they're always screw up or something. And so I feel like you could have like really had a great villain with Balon if they just establish that, because some of my favorite villains have like very interesting relationships with their apprentices, and I'm not getting anything from them in this show.
I'm looking for more reactions, guys. I'm sorry. If anybody wants to take the floor, please. About what? I mean, okay. Well, yes, it is distracting that he does look like space Elon Musk, and he does. It's very distracting. But again, we should note that Lars Mikkelsen played Thrawn in the animated series, and maybe it's just because the voice is it's the same voice.
Yeah.
And it adds definitely to the presence of him being Thrawn.
No,
I mean,
like I feel I'm making fun of him, but like he looks creepy. He looks intimidating.
No, but that's good though.
He looks,
that's yeah.
Like I said earlier, off-putting. His little smiles at the end of everything. I don't think that he looks like bad, and I think that he might have. A lot of the characters that were introduced in this episode, I think, are my favorite. The witches looked amazing, as I kept saying throughout the whole episode. Very excited to see them.
The witches were great.
Yeah, they were really
looked great. Like,
but I'm kind of upset because I'm pretty sure we're not gonna get anything with them. But that's fine, I guess.
I mean, that begs the question. Why are they here? What do they want?
Yeah.
What's the end game here? What has Thrawn promised them? Why are they helping Thrawn get back? And what alliance have they made? And
I'm just so tired of them bringing things back from Clone Wars and not doing absolutely anything with them. Like, that's so annoying.
They're just there for decoration.
Yeah, and like, it's crazy to me that they were not that when they first appeared, and you really can't think of doing anything else with them. Like,
is a reaction I don't quite understand myself. I'm not gonna say the name, but loved that it had some classic goofy Star Wars energy. That I wasn't upset with. I think that felt pretty okay here. Continue saying awesome new characters of all shapes, sizes, and yes, I cried. Okay.
I'm really upset of what they did with Ezra.
Which was what?
Nothing.
Thank you for.
Yeah.
He's just
like,
there.
The rock people, you couldn't even explain that? Like.
And I mean, how shitty can you be? It's like, again, the last episode ends with like, clearly they're going for something deeply profound to have changed within Ahsoka, and yet we begin the episode with her just going, oh my god, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that was crazy. And I love how each time we're just like, are they actually gonna do it? Are they gonna do it?
Yeah, and the other thing, okay, what the hell? Some person tweeted out saying, we were thinking they were just lost in the unknown regions, and Dave was like, you're thinking it's way too small. But that's what we just saw. They were literally just stranded, doing nothing. This is what I mean about these Star Wars fans not having... Look, I don't even know why I would bother saying it, because I feel like if people have been listening long enough, or people, maybe let's say people who are just clicking this video, I get the suspicion that they probably would think myself to come off as condescending and talk down to people. And you know what? I apologize. I really do. I don't mean to make people feel that way. But, we've been doing this for almost 10 years now, right? And we've encountered a good amount of stupidity online. And we have to, I think, take pride in the idea that we're one of the few outlets out there that, calls out the brain cancer that is like literally out there in fandoms. The word salads, just the gaps in absolute sense of logic. And I feel, as our overall interest in film and stories dwindle, we are beginning to see a rot manifest itself throughout every kind of discourse imaginable. There are literal people out there online that are waging a war against sex being featured in movies. And they're being 100% serious. And you've all seen this. And it's funny, but it also is quite sad, because look at what the conversation has devolved into. And the correlation very much is there between that and the rise of which kind of franchises and which kind of films have been making more money and which ones have been making less and less and less as the years have gone by. The sense of intellectual curiosity and the sense of the film culture and the general populace is just, it's not what it was. There's a reason why the ratings in the Oscars aren't great. And it's not just because people have left cable for the most part. They've left movies. They've left being interested. We've become more entrenched in our own teams, where it used to be that people would actually, be looking forward to what the Academy, whatever that is, would consider what the best in movies were. Now, at some point in the early to mid 2010s, fans were like offended that films that didn't belong to their beloved franchise were not included in the best of the year. And, as the interest in films overall faded, again, and then we have people like Trevor Noah, as recently as a few years ago, complaining that how come none of the films that he would see would ever be nominated. And that wasn't the problem. The problem is you don't see enough movies. People don't see movies anymore. And because of that, we've now come to this place where there is just, a lack of literacy, a lack of intellectual curiosity in stories, and to the point where we can't detect what themes are or arcs are anymore, right? And that's just a long way of saying is, how the fuck do you watch that episode and come away with the idea that, this wasn't just Thrawn and Ezra just being stranded? And how do you think that is this thinking big approach? How else do you get to this place?
Mm-hmm.
Thrawn was literally waiting for them.
Yeah, that's all it was. He was just literally waiting for them, and that's where we are.
For the little that Ezra said, he literally goes, "Took you long enough. Can't wait to go home."
Mm-hmm.
He said that as if he doesn't already know Thrawn's out there.
That's the other thing.
That's wild to me. What do you mean Thrawn is not out there looking for Ezra? Actively looking for Ezra? What do you mean they've been stranded there for over 10 years and they're not, and he's just chilling?
Mm-hmm.
And so is he? Like, no. I don't believe it.
Okay, those stormtroopers, they had red stripes on them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is strange, or this is interesting. In the subtitles, if you had it playing with subtitles, somebody caught this. They weren't labeled. You know how they were chanting Thrawn, which was weird, but okay. They were chanting Thrawn. In the subtitles, they weren't referred to as stormtroopers. They were referred to as night troopers. And keep in mind, they were red. They were wearing red stripes on them. So
are they dead? And the witches brought them back? That's kind of cool. That's sick.
Oh, you see, I wasn't even thinking that, but that probably is what it is. Because I wasn't even thinking there. I was like, okay, so what are these stormtroopers now? Members of the Order of the Night Sister, or they very well could just be mummified, which we've seen before.
Yeah, I think they're dead.
Is Thrawn dead?
Nah, no way. And you know what?
Oh,
So
Wait, sorry, let me explain. That guy, the Inquisitor, the one that Ahsoka killed, and then like his smoke came out. Is that what they're gonna show with the stormtroopers? Maybe.
Probably.
Yeah, I would actually love that. Honestly, with fucking Sabine, Ahsoka, and Ezra. They're all fighting the stormtroopers together, and that's all you see. Just them cutting it down, then the smoke comes up. They actually like kill the entire army.
Well, one thing that would go against this line of thinking would be when Thrawn refused to send more troopers to help out Balon and Shin. When he was talking to Morgan saying that, their numbers have dwindled dramatically. I feel like if the Night Sisters could just easily resurrect, then maybe he wouldn't be as concerned with the exact number of troopers he has. But another interesting question to ask here is, where the hell is the remainder of his fleet?
Mm-hmm.
And Captain Pelion, who was in the ship so what?
That's what I'm saying. I think next episode not that we're gonna get flashbacks, but I think we're gonna just get more of Thrawn and what he's trying to do, and maybe more of Balon and what he's trying to do, which I wouldn't mind, but again, second to last episode, and we're gonna figure all this out. And it would be nice if we get more Ahsoka again in the Ahsoka show, but that's just me.
Well, since there's only 2 episodes left, not that we ever expected a resolution of any kind, but it does get you wondering, how is this gonna end?
Yeah.
Especially since it's beginning to feel like however it ends, the potential follow-up to it, which would be the movie, who knows when that's gonna come out, right? Is it going to come out? I mean, it is a movie, and when was the last time a Star Wars movie was made?
Yeah.
I mean, I assume because it's Dave Filoni, but I mean, watch out, because, I mean, Jesus, man. The number of people that Kathy has gone through and continues to go through, Taika Waititi said this week that his movie was canceled. Which, that's not surprising.
I mean, if they get the director from this episode... there's potential.
Well, no. Well, I mean, in a new one, maybe, but Filoni is directing the movie.
Interesting.
No, it's not. It's actually quite devastating because the quality of his directing in these episodes have not been...
Yeah, we literally just said that this is probably the best directed episode. I mean, I said it, but yeah, that's kind of disappointing.
You know what? We could look it up, but I sure as hell know that was not Filoni.
No, I don't think so.
No way in hell was it. But man, if it was Bryce Dallas Howard, everybody would be like, Bryce Dallas Howard, the sun, we revolve around you and everything. Because everything she does is amazing, right? If it's Star Wars. If it was her own project, they wouldn't give a shit. Sorry, I'm just saying the truth. Did we miss anything? I do wonder if the people... See, it seems to me that Balon wants to create a new order, and this is the power that he truly values. I wonder how that's going to go over with his apprentice. I also wonder who is calling to him, and if whoever that who is want the same thing Balon wants, or if they're using Balon the same way Balon used Thrawn, they're using Balon to get to him, or for themselves to also escape and wreak havoc in the other galaxy. Whoever they are. And I'm wondering, because, and I may have to pull up the episode and play that part again, but the way that he was talking about them made them sound menacing. Not necessarily warm and cuddly and fuzzy. And he made it seem like Thrawn was kind of running away from them.
That's
Yeah.
true.
So what are they and who are they?
Mm.
You know, that's something to keep in mind. Again, 2 episodes, I don't know, that are left. Again, this was people need to keep this in mind. This is the same story, or this is the story, but a truncated version of it, because it used to be what I would assume would either be at minimum a 16 to 18 episode season in animation. That's what I assume what originally this was supposed to be. Well, I shouldn't say assume. I assume the number of episodes. I know for a fact, we know for a fact, this was supposed to be animation. They were working on animation, and they were literally recording or about to record voice work for some of the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
That was done. We know that it was. And this was done as early as they were working on this as early as 2019, 2020. And then at some point in COVID, they changed gears because Favreau thought it would be better if they did it in live action. I don't know why you listen to that guy. Look at what we have here. So, yeah, I guess that's that. I am also, I mean, again, like you want to be like interested and curious about where Balon goes next, but there are two things. Well, one big thing is the actor is no longer with us, and the film that, which is the preceding or is the next chapter in the story, has not even been shot yet. I don't even know if a script is ready. So I assume that when this episode ends, that's the last we'll see of this character, at least with Ray Stevenson playing him. And you also have to wonder about like what other threads on this show are going to be like left hanging intentionally. To get to the movie that we're going to get to. But I do wonder, though, and again, considering how much money it takes to create these digital monstrosities, we all feel pretty confident or maybe even secure in what Peter suspects greatly what will be done in the Heir to the Empire movie, which was, we know it's going to be a big crossover event. That's what it's been envisioned as. And considering that we've already seen some of these before, is it what Peter strongly believes is, considering, of course, what they've been doing, what they do, we will see Luke, Han, and Leia participate in the battle against Thrawn.
I think
Yes.
so. Yeah. They've already de-aged Luke. I mean, they de-aged Harrison Ford and
Indiana Jones. Which, I'll be honest with you, Indiana Jones 5 is not a film I have, necessarily too strong feelings for. It's entertaining enough, but at the same time, with what Indiana Jones is, the scale and the set pieces were very disappointing, and that's kind of all the movie. But what was one of the disappointing aspects of the film was, I would have thought, considering how long was the sequence? 10 minutes? The first opening of the movie, it's a D.H. Harrison Ford, and I was disappointed in that. I thought it would have looked a lot better than that.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So I don't know if the tech is there, and again, I don't know but then that's never stopped them before, has it? And I know Mark Hamill, I guess, came back with Mandalorian. They filmed him, right? Or at least not. I don't know if they filmed him in the first appearance he had, but definitely when it was Boba Fett, he was there and he shot some stuff, but then they de-aged him. But it doesn't exactly look amazing. It never really has. Like, it still looks pretty freaking fake. Like, I would have far preferred to have just had a different actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of strange.
It's funny to me how they used fan casting for Ahsoka, right? Like somebody like put up a drawing of Rosario Dawson, and then that ended up like coming into fruition. But I just would have. I want to take a peek at the multiverse and see what it would have looked like if they had cast Sebastian Stan to play Luke.
I know it's,
and not that I'm like so gung ho about it. Not that I care ultimately, because I don't really. I would rather not be using Luke so many times.
yeah.
But it's curious to see what that would have looked like.
Yeah. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in comparison to what we got. I rather would have gotten that than just like this reliance on technology, which may in and of itself have led to the current struggle that we're seeing right now in Hollywood, which is, come to a grinding halt because of a disagreement over how to use this technology and whether or not, certain rights are being infringed. They are. They usually are, and they always will be, it seems like. So, yeah. We didn't talk about it at all last week because things were happening, of course, and it was so minuscule. But apparently that there was a shout out to Senator Organa, Leia.
Oh yeah.
Who at this point is a senator. And Leia is somebody, again, like Mon Mothma and like Hera, whose perspective I would like to hear from in the sense of what is going on with this New Republic, right? Because this New Republic isn't working out. And I know that just to fill some gaps here, and then we'll close off. But I know at some point, and this must be after Mon Mothma's passing, which is pretty ridiculous how the New Republic continued to just ignore the First Order, even after it became the First Order. Like when so many years after the Empire, this militia is back, and they just did nothing about it. The New Republic was so sticking their heads in the sand, even after they had the whole Nazi Empire came back, and Leia had to basically quit the New Republic and form the resistance to raise an army to fight Nazis. Because that's the only way you fight authoritarianism. Authoritarianism, they will crush you with whatever means they have at their disposal. Oftentimes that means death and destruction. And the idea that this New Republic only got worse as it went along, that so many of the people within it had to defect and form their own unsanctioned resistance, which again, that's part of for me. If there are criticisms that I have of the overall direction of the sequel trilogy, that's one of them. I really wish they would have delved more into the philosophy and the theology of what was going on and the politics of what was going on in that war. That's really what's missing at its core for me of that trilogy. But then again, we're talking about a trilogy that doesn't really exist as one for me. I kind of see it as a duology, I see 7 and I see 8, and we will not speak of 9. That's just kind of how things worked out. So again, I don't think of it as a trilogy because of how things ended up being. But any closing thoughts, guys, on what we saw?
I agree with you. I think it's again, literally any other story would have been better than what we're getting.
Mm-hmm.
What you just said is so it's interesting. It's interesting, like Mandalorian and all these other shows. Why are we watching that? Why are you giving us that when we literally have the in-between time of like going from one place to the other, but we're back at that same place with the people who fought them in the first place? Why aren't we getting that? Why are we going back to Mandalore? It's dead. Forget about it. Obviously it was sad. Oh well, forget about it. It's dead. Leave it how it is. And then we're getting this when we're skipping all of this information clearly because it's missing from this show. I hate it.
Yeah, it's pretty abysmal. And I I'll be honest. I'm curious to see what they think makes for a good resolution, but I don't suspect it'll be one. I
I
don't know
just saw a
how
tweet
that can be.
actually, like right now, that said, I think uh the time spent between um the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy is becoming my favorite moment in Star Wars.
Say it again.
That I saw a tweet, I lost it, that it said the in-between time of the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy is becoming my favorite moment in Star Wars.
Yeah, I saw that tweet too. Now that I recall, it's like I asked David last week. I don't know if it was on this show or if it was through text, but the more and more Star Wars fans talk about what they like, you really have to wonder if they even like the first movie because it never gets brought up as like anyone's favorite. But like that first movie encapsulates the DNA of what this is supposed to be, the science fiction fantasy story. And yet uh the way people talk about it, it feels like, and you know what, it shouldn't be that big of a surprise because so many people were like bitching endlessly 10 years ago when they announced that all of the extended lore that was in the comic books and all those novels that were written post episode 6 up until the Disney acquisition were not going to be recognized as official. And it's so funny if you look back at that time, the reaction should have really been indicative of how entitled these fans were and how much they take everything out of proportion. Of course, they were not going to go off of that because they're going to make a new timeline. They're going to make new movies. And
Mm-hmm.
Lucas himself always said that stuff wasn't canon. The movies and what I personally work on is the canon, not everything else. Now, I don't mind creators taking a lot of inspiration from the extended universe. Of course, there's been a lot of that. And I love the idea of incorporating that stuff that people loved into the timeline. That's not the issue. I think the issue that what I'm finding is Star Wars fans seem to think that the DNA of what Star Wars is fits more with the extended universe, which leaned far more into science fiction than the original trilogy, which was science fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fundamental misunderstanding and misreading. And that's why we say that Star Wars is not all things to all people. It is very different things. And it varies drastically from person to person. And that's just the truth of it. There's so many Star Wars projects out now, but it honestly is kind of a jump ball to see like, okay, like today, for example, I read a tweet of somebody who was like praising Last Jedi, that saying that it was his favorite movie in the Star Wars trilogy, in the Star Wars franchise. And then he said he followed that up, and it broke my brain what he said. That his second favorite film was The Rise of Skywalker. And I'm like, that does not compute. Like his favorite movie in the whole like 9-movie saga was 8, and his second favorite was 9. And I'm not saying that to crap on him, but I'm just making that as a point of reference here that Star Wars fans have never agreed and never will.
Yeah.
And I feel the moral of the story of how these shows have become increasingly underwhelming and increasingly incoherent is, and Alexis, go back and watch that discussion because we delve into the whole of the idea of like how much Kathy really just like went full force into Clone Wars stuff as if every Star Wars fan knows what that is. We basically said it was the equivalent if Feige said, let's use the S.H.I.E.L.D. characters, let's put Daisy and Coulson and make them the focus of Phase 5. But Marvel fans haven't seen the show, and it's just like the same rationale. But it's just so funny to me, or I guess what we should be thinking about is they've misjudged gravely this strategy of really listening to the fans. You should never listen to the fans. Like, and I don't mean like you shouldn't like listen to what they have to say or what they like or don't like. I mean, don't take marching orders from them. Don't get ideas from them in your stories that you want to tell. That's what you have writers and directors and
Especially with
creatives
something
for.
like Star Wars, it's so divisive. Like, just tell the story. Like,
but tell a story with knowing the basics of telling a story, and we've lost that in these shows. Again, think back to last year in Book of Boba Fett. There was this whole dynamic between Cad Bane and Boba Fett that you were expected to know about based off of an unreleased Clone Wars episode. That's how far we've fallen here. And it would be one thing if that was just like the Filoni side of things. But no, the Filoni has become all of Star Wars.
Yeah. Which would have been great
if
back then. And
yeah,
if, you know, I feel like if he truly did what he wanted to, but it just doesn't seem that way. It just too many people trying to tell too many stories that just ends up being a bunch of big old mess.
You know what? I love Dave Filoni, but I feel like doing directing and writing for live action was something he was pushed into doing more so than something that he felt he wanted to do. I've always had this kind of feeling that because the powers that be that surround him, and seemingly also the fans themselves, consider live action to be the cream of the crop, the superior medium, a lot of fans and Jon Favreau and all those executives around him, producers, felt it was like they were doing him a favor by like pulling him out of animation and into live action.
Yeah.
And I don't feel Filoni ever had a desire to leave animation, because that's where he's an animator himself. That's where his heart has always been. And I'm sorry to say, and I know we here have been guilty of bitching about like, well, why wasn't, like, if you're going to be pulling, why are you picking and choosing which people to bring back from animation into live action? And it feels rather insulting when like some come back and some don't, like Ashley Eckstein. We haven't talked about her at all. Okay, putting that to the side. It just seems to me, and we have enough to look at from years worth of output from Filoni himself, directing and writing. And I never want to be that person that says, stay in your lane. No. I feel that's a really shitty mentality to have. If people want to explore and if they want to grow into a different medium, they should have the ability to do that. But considering what we've seen, the drastic difference in quality between his live action direction and his animation direction is so dramatic. It just seems to me that maybe live action isn't for him.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he just hasn't had enough practice for it. Yeah.
I mean, you could say, I would say I'm not saying he should quit entirely.
I know.
I'm just saying that I don't think this is something he wanted to do on his own accord. I think this was something that he was talked into, something he should want. And then by the person who was talking him into doing it, but the person who was talking into him doing it was Favreau, and taking direction from that man on Star Wars.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could have
Which is
succeeded.
like so crazy to me, because I feel like if anybody had anything to say or should have had more power or control of Star Wars, it should be him. He was literally the apprentice. Like, Ahsoka, he made Ahsoka be like based off of his experiences and his own relationship with George Lucas. you know, which is
Right.
like that. It. I wish I could be like a fly in the wall in the conversations that were had where.
But also, you gotta like take this to the fans and challenge them, because the fans themselves, keep saying that, well, Filoni is the heir apparent to George Lucas. Well, if that was the case, why was he not elevated sooner? And why is Favreau ahead of him in
Mm-hmm.
this hierarchy? Is it because he's experienced in live action and you guys have this warped mentality that live action is better than animation?
Yep. There was this like there's a reason why George Lucas wanted to do this in animation also.
Yeah.
So, you know, but there was a bunch of tweets out this week after Anakin came out being like live action Anakin show. What? There's already an Anakin show. It's called Clone Wars. Go watch it,
Seven
people.
seasons long. 7 seasons long, with a number of episodes that continue to remain unproduced. You want to have some content, Disney Plus? Go ahead and animate those. Make a Night Sisters movie with
Mm-hmm.
Ventress in the Clone Wars. Just an idea. Just because you didn't write, there are unproduced Clone Wars stories that were written to be episodes. Sure, that doesn't mean you can't do something called Clone Wars Chronicles on the number of different characters that exist and do new stories in that timeline, considering
Mm-hmm.
that fans still want. And sure, I'd be curious to see what characters are doing in that time and age. Sure. What you're doing basically with Tales of the Jedi, but better.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe
And
more focused.
Tales of the Jedi is really good.
Yeah.
Why? And it was. I feel like a lot of people watched that, like, because it had characters that you like, which is what you like to do. Why not just do that?
Yeah. So, that's kind of where I'm at. I love Dave, but I don't know if this is working out.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's not working out. But I'm talking to him, I'm just like, his output in live action, unfortunately, has just made me reevaluate him, and it's made me question what he really thinks Star Wars is. Because when I hear him talk, I feel like this guy gets it. This guy gets, because he learned from George, like, directly, the influences that George had in his mind when he made the original Star Wars.
And not even that, though. Like, George picked him because of what he thought Star Wars was, or what Star Wars was to him. Like, he handpicked him for that reason. So obviously, like, he is somebody to listen to when talking about Star Wars and talking about the meaning of it. But I don't understand, like, what is going on right now. Like,
and you know what else I also don't get is, I don't know if Lucas felt the need to retire when he sold Disney. Now, certainly, of course, there was no world that would have existed that he remained at the top of the company when Disney acquired it, and they were making new movies. But I feel like there should have been somebody in the room in Disney. Well, we all know that Disney canceled the Clone Wars. There should have been somebody there. And I always felt a little bit surprised that George himself didn't stipulate to Bob Iger directly that one of the conditions of the purchase of Lucasfilm would be that you would continue the show in some way, instead of like doing what ended up happening at the time, which was a very confusing time to be a Clone Wars fan, as to like, why would you cancel this show when it was getting so good right now, and why didn't Lucas do anything to keep it alive? And maybe no one is saying Lucas didn't try. Probably ultimately Bob Iger was like, no. And then that was that. But I was just surprised that no one was around to insist that just because, George was retiring from movies didn't mean he couldn't continue to contribute in some way. Like, I felt like the team that was Lucas Filoni was what made the Clone Wars as special as it was, and someone should have been there to recognize that and allow those two to continue working together in whatever Star Wars material they wanted to do next. I could also just have imagined what you know, in one of our recent podcasts we talked about like how Disney and Lucasfilm did nothing to keep the Indiana Jones IP alive out there. And one of our solutions were like, why couldn't you have just done a Clone Wars style animated show in between certain adventures just to keep the idea of Indiana Jones alive? And I wonder,
They
wow,
waited too long for everything.
they always do. They always do.
Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I understand like you wanting to buy it and whatever, like acquire it, but why stop something that is obviously working?
And it did feel like one of the stipulations on Bob Iger's part was like, okay, I want to buy this, George, but you need to go.
Yeah.
You need to go. And look, to be fair, Lucas is not exactly charitable with like his ideas and his vision, and it's gotten him into a lot of trouble, especially when you look at the outcome of the quality of his movies. We all know that. But considering that one of the talking points that's been used against Disney these last few years has been about pushing George off to the side. Somebody should have had enough sense to have seen that coming and should have kept him in the company somewhere doing something. How like Hayao Miyazaki was still at Studio Ghibli doing things of his own accord. I mean, apparently he made a movie this entire time. We didn't really know. I didn't know he was making a new movie. And apparently he's back at the office drawing and making he's 82 years old, and he's like, maybe it'll come out when he's 93. The next one, since it takes 10 years in between movies, I guess. But there's no reason why he shouldn't have been allowed to remain and do new stories on his own accord that wasn't involved with the movies and anything, and then you would have had him at your back and with the whole. And again, we could be here the whole week and talk about all the mistakes that they made, with how they inherited Star Wars and what they did. I mean, and I would feel, and I want to make it very clear, it would not be the same conclusions that the rest of the people on the internet would say were the problems for what happened with Star Wars. I think by and large, people who, use the term Disney Star Wars are working from a very flawed mentality, and more often than not are working in bad faith to deceive many people, because they have their own agenda at play here, less about like Star Wars. And then ultimately, the ones that are well-meaning, I think fundamentally just don't get what Star Wars is and never will be. So there's, again, how I mentioned, there's just different factions and different layers and levels of Star Wars and what it is and what it means to people. But for us, in our own small corner, this is where we are. And we feel like we see exactly what the problems are, like nobody else does. Like it is day and night what the issues seem to be. But we don't necessarily have any faith that this will get resolved, because the majority of the masses, as per usual, are not understanding exactly what the problems are. If people are praising tonight's episode, well, then we get what we get. Any last thoughts? And I know I said I called for last thoughts like 20 minutes ago. I'm sorry this really went over, but it's just, since we're talking about all this anyway, it's just putting it out there and talking about it. But anyway, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week and see what happens here on Red Spotlight podcast. Anyone that listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Castbox, stay under our Red Spotlight for more content and more. Keep in mind, of course, we have a fall season of movies coming up. We will be back for that. So stay tuned. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.